And I just love having a finger on the pulse of like what the younger generation is into, because in their world, they've only ever grown up with social media. Like you and I are about the same age. Like we remember what it was like before. Like we had a good 2-3 years we had all of high school before Instagram.
I didn't have a smartphone until college.
There you go. So talk to me a little bit about how this generation is so different than the millennial generation. Greetings and welcome back to the Kiss My Aesthetic podcast. I'm so excited to have a kind of atypical guest for our show. I think you're the first full-time educator teacher on the podcast, Carolyn. Welcome.
It's so exciting. Hi, thank you.
Oh my gosh, it's going to be great. For anyone who doesn't know you or doesn't know that I've been actually coming down to Grossmont High School now twice to come help with branding. Tell us who you are and what you do, who you help.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Jungman. I am the photography and digital arts teacher at Grossmont High School, which is in East County, San Diego. I teach grades 10 through 12th. I have a photography class that I have 4 different sections of that they look at beginning photography, basics, camera settings, et cetera, all the way through the digital side. And I'm hoping to get more into the darkroom with them. And then I have a graphic design pathway that is a 2-year program that focuses on branding and logo design and illustration and the careers in the creative arts. So this is my 10th year teaching now, and
Nice.
which has flown by, but also slogged on through. And it's a ton of fun, and it's quite literally never boring.
Yeah, no kidding. It's been a minute. Like in some ways, I feel like I was in high school yesterday, and in other ways, I feel like that was a different lifetime. Talk to us about what your high school experience was like and how you feel now being an educator of high schoolers.
So even more interestingly, I teach at the high school I went to. So I graduated from Grossmont High School in 2010, and my dad and his siblings all went to Grossmont as well. So I'm part of the community very, very thoroughly. And as a student here, I was talking to my students about it today. It's a radically different place, both because it's, a different community that's changed and adapted, but also because we're very different people. I'm a millennial and they are not. They are Gen Z through and through. And I've taught pretty much all of Gen Z as I started in 2015. Yeah. And now we're kind of the tail end of Gen Z now. They are moving into Gen Alpha, our current freshmen, which is terrifying. But it's a very exciting change. They're different students, even like pre-COVID, post-COVID is a radically different space, but it's a lot of fun. And I get to teach photography, which I took for the first time as a student here. So it's a neat way to kind of give back to my community, but also be a part of it. And I couldn't ask for anything better. And I'm very lucky space-wise. My classroom's beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Our facilities are impressive.
Yes.
Wish I could give you a tour right now.
Completely. No, I walked in, I was like, holy smokes. Like, you're not kidding around. Like, this is a full-blown computer lab, access to tools, software, equipment, everything. Talk to us a little bit about how you even found your way to me, because I'm still so curious how that happened and what we've been able to do with your students with the Kiss My Portfolio Challenge.
Yes. So, okay. One of the things that we're supposed to do as CTE teachers, career technical education, is reach out to industry partners to get them involved in our programs, because the more we can connect students with the workplace, the more we can prepare them for the workplace. And we're supposed to inform our practices based on what's happening in the industry, because, I haven't been a working graphic designer, so I don't necessarily know exactly what's happening in the industry because I'm teaching. So I think I found you on TikTok or Instagram years ago. And I think it was back when you were doing all of your traveling. It was like, oh, how cool is this? I love her designs. This is great. Just many people you follow. And then one day you said something in a video about Carlsbad. And I was like, wait a minute, that's down the street. I live in that same county. She lives here. And then it's
funny.
like, and so I just was like, you're going to get DM her on Instagram. That's weird.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, it's fine. I'll just reach. And then I went to your website and I was like, well, I could reach out. Worst is going to happen is she looks at this and goes, absolutely not. And never, that's the end of it. And I reach out to people. It's hard to do and it's uncomfortable and it's weird, but I reach out to all sorts of artists. So if anybody's listening and wants to be a guest speaker. But I've had, this year alone, I've had a forensic artist who does she rebuilds missing, mostly missing children, and does age progressions. And she spoke about via Zoom to my students. I've had, a graphic designer who was a Grossmont graduate who now works for a school district in Texas. And he's like, I'll speak. And, so I reached out and then you were like, I will do you one better. I could speak, or I have this project in mind. And it was like, so much better than I could have expected. Um,
No,
even better.
this scratches such an itch for me because in high school, my English teacher, who was one of my favorite teachers, for extra credit, you could tutor the kids in your class that weren't doing so well, which feels weird,
Interesting.
like, in
A
hindsight,
little
like,
bit.
feels a little bit like a trippy power
Identifying
dynamic.
them is a little weird, but yeah.
Yeah. So I would go and go get extra credit because I was an overachiever, like type A, oldest child, and was going and was like talking to these students. And I remember my English teacher was like, you'd be a really good teacher. And I was like, absolutely not. I told her, I was like, nope, I can't. I'm not doing that. That is not for me. Because I was like, I remember getting so frustrated, like trying to help this girl through her English paper. And she was like distracted and she was texting and and I was just like, I don't have the patience for this. But then the great irony is like now in my business, like I do a good amount of like teaching, like through the podcast, through the blogs, through my social media, like educating. And the reason this Kiss My Portfolio challenge even existed was because so many people asked me about my process that during COVID, I was like, well, this could be fun. And so I offered it for free the first time. I don't know if you know this, but like 268 people signed up. And I was
That's
like,
about one of my years of teaching, actually. I teach about that many each year. So there you go.
like so like in over my head. So then we offer to pay, then we keep going and going and going. So I've been sitting on these since COVID. And so when you reached out, I was
Right.
like, slam dunk. Let me get you
I
a
had no idea.
code. Here's the deal. Let's see what these kids can do because I hired my full-time employee because she took the Kiss My Portfolio challenges. And because I saw her
Fascinating.
work and I
Right.
saw how responsive she was and she was doing better design work than I was and I was like, "Hey, you want a job?" And she was like, "Yes." So, it's a
How'd you
great for
know?
me, it's a great like sneaky recruitment tool and I just love having a finger on the pulse of like what the younger generation is into because in their world, they've only ever grown up with social media. Like you and I are about the same age. Like we remember what it was like before. Like we had a good 2-3 years we had all of high school before Instagram.
I didn't have a smartphone until college.
There you go. So talk to me a little bit about how this generation is so different than the millennial generation.
So it's interesting. The questions that like you had sent me, and I'm looking at them and I'm like,
Yes,
okay, some of them are harder to answer just because looking at generations is such a weird
of
concept
course.
because you have to make such broad generalizations. And so not every kid, and even as I was talking to my students about this interview, and they're like, well, not me. And I'm like, didn't say that, your generation.
Sure.
And of course, I don't know adult Gen Z very well. I'm very, very informed on teenage Gen Z. So that is kind of where my expertise sits.
Right.
I have seen a major, and it's not just as a generation, but also post COVID, a major uptick in not just their social media use, but their how to put this nicely, addictions to their devices and to
Yeah.
social media. And it's a struggle to pull their attention and to hold their attention for long periods of time. And as we talk about differences in generation, we come from the participation trophy generation, which isn't our fault because we weren't giving ourselves prizes. Our adults were. And so a lot of a generations will say faults are the faults of the people who raised them.
Yes.
The Gen Z generation struggles with consequences because nobody has ever held them to consequences. And that is something that I struggle with a lot as a teacher because that's what we have to do. But
Uh-huh.
like in the state of California, we've changed a lot of our education standards and lowered a lot of our consequences, like absent consequences. We're no longer allowed to penalize students for their lack of attendance in your classroom,
Wild.
which when you teach a graphic design class where you cannot
Yeah.
send the programs or the computers home with the students,
Right.
is
Right.
the class. And, my class isn't meant to be taken as a digital online course. It's meant to be done in person and with me. So, and if I designed it differently, I'm happy to, but that's not the class, which creates a challenging kind of power dynamic with the students because they know that there's less consequences and there's less I can do. And as much as I could harp on that for eons, um,
Yeah.
as I'm talking to my students about it, one of the other things was during COVID, we struggled so much as educators to get kids to come to the table to be a part of education and
Sure.
participate and come back. We dropped every ounce of consequence because we were just hoping they would show up even once. So it's like, I'll accept late work until forever. And I'll give you extra time even after the semester's over to keep turning in stuff. Just please turn in something. And then we come back and we're trying to recoup that rigor and that. And it is like clawing our way
Yeah.
through. And anything I know about education is that it swings. It's a pendulum. And I'm hoping we can kind of
Totally.
back to center.
Which, like,
Um,
hats off to educators because, like, I can't even imagine what your job has been like in the last 5-10 years because, like, holy smokes, like, I still remember being in high school, and if someone's cell phone went off, like, made a sound, everyone had to put their phones on their desk, and if yours was turned on, it got taken away for the day. Like, you could
I was,
never do that now. I was
yeah,
so enamored by the fact that you had your students walk in and put their phones in the cubbies in the little
that's new.
hanging chart And that's how you were checking their attendance was like if they put their phone. And I was like, okay, well, that's smart because it's so true. Like in a lot of ways that like I think millennials, because we have this kind of performance anxiety and participation
Just a
trophy
little.
and kind of
Yeah.
like try hardy and just like to like take things very personally, but like don't tell any like I think millennials have a hard time standing up for themselves in a lot of ways. I think what's so refreshing about Gen Z is they will let you know exactly how they feel. Like they are not
Unapologetically.
shy, not shy. They are not shy. They are
Yeah.
not because they're like, so what? What are you going to do? So what? What are you going to? That's maybe this is coming from that lack of consequences kind of thing.
Yes. Well, and they're more casual about everything they do, and they're sarcastic, and they're not. That doesn't necessarily mean they don't care.
Yeah.
But they're like snark is part of their charm, and which I respond very well to because I'm a very sarcastic individual. So it's why high school works for me. I am not a kindergarten teacher. That much
There
is
you go.
clear. Despite my like wall borders,
Sure.
but they're unapologetic in how they do everything, and they're just like, I do this, and this is what I do, and who I am, and that's fine. If you don't like it, okay.
Right.
And
Right.
that to me, because high school me is like, oh my gosh, I have to get the pink phone because everyone has the pink phone. And it never would have occurred to me to be like, why? Do you actually like the pink phone? It did. But I like it
True.
never would have occurred to me to not think about what they thought because it didn't matter. And now as an adult, I'm like, it doesn't matter. No, who cares what I think and who cares what anybody else thinks of me? But
yeah, but we had to learn that that wasn't natural to millennials, I feel.
no.
And I think
And
what's so
Gen Z
interesting
just lives it.
yeah, and to bring it into, like, the branding, marketing side of things, right? Like, they've grown up where, like, social media was a baseline, like, a smartphone was a baseline. This wasn't like a, "Oh, maybe I'll get it when I'm 16." Like, no, like, this is how they communicate with each other, and then during COVID, this is their way of being social with each other. So I also think that Gen Z has an affinity for brands and companies and founders and entrepreneurs and YouTubers and influencers the way that we did not. Do you agree with that?
Yes, it's interesting. One of the questions you asked me was like, how do they feel about this? And I'm like, I don't know, because I don't feel, I'm not them. So I asked my students and I asked one day in class, I'm like, okay, everybody, I have a quick question. And I'm like, how do you feel about, branding and marketing and entrepreneurship? And one of my students in my advanced class turns and was passionate. And I'm just like, oh, that was like an aggressive answer. And I sat there with this like, is it because I'm a great teacher? She's like, no. And I'm like, okay, thank you. And she goes, so sorry, you're great. But like, it wasn't that got us into it. She's like, so many of us have side hustles. And I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, she's like, I'm starting a drop shipping business. And another girl's like, oh, yeah, I resell shoes. And I'm like, with what time, you guys? In high school, I was an athlete. I was a student. I didn't have time for a job. And I had students who jobs and things like that. And these kids are like, oh, I run a floral design business. And this girl's like, oh, I sell strawberries and cream. I make them and I bring them to school and sell them other places. And I'm just like, oh, I make jewelry. And it just started this like popping up of probably 60% of them have side hustles. And in digging further, I'm like, is it because you don't have traditional jobs? And to some extent, a lot of them are avoiding the traditional jobs. But one girl explained it to me. She's like, everything costs too much. We have to supplement. A standard job at McDonald's in the after school hours isn't going to cut it. And she and I had it was actually a very refreshing, very real conversation. So I'm grateful to this podcast because it brought that conversation to me.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay, we're going to step back. I'm very blessed in how I was raised. But like, if I wanted to go to the movies on a Friday night, my parents would hand me $20 and off I went to the movies and I'd bring them back the change and we'd move on with our lives. And yes, I would do things around the house and chores and I'd participate in the family. That was how I did that. I had an allowance. But if there was something I wanted that was a little bit more expensive, I'd have to earn it in certain ways. But it was
babysitting money or whatever. Yeah.
Given to me in a lot of the sense. And she's like, everything costs so much. My parents can barely make rent. So if I want to go to the movies, first of all, it's 40, not 20. And second, my parents, I'm not asking them for this. They can't hardly feed the family. So I'm doing what I want to do by earning it. And I was like, oh, that was like a radical kind of check. And as I'm looking at my students in a totally different light, I mean, it was actually very interesting. And I'm meeting with one of our instructional leadership. We have a director of instructional technology and whatnot on our campus. And I'm part of the team. And we're going to sit down and meet because I'm like, why aren't we embracing this entrepreneurship on our campus? Why don't we have a marketing class? Because they want it. They're literally asking for it.
Oh my gosh, business basics. Like my sister and I talk about this all the time. Like our family is very entrepreneurial. So like when I graduated college and was like, oh, I kind of think I want to do this and like make money doing it, charging $15 an hour for graphic design. My dad's like, yeah, both my dad and my mom. try it. If it sucks, go get a job. Like, it was always like you can always fall back on something else, but like you might
Sure.
as well give it a go, which is also a total blessing and a privilege to have that kind of support and to be able to live at home and to be able to charge $15 an hour and then 20 and then 25 and then 30 and like climb my way up. But
Sure.
so much of what I learned was on the internet for free. Like, I found
Yes.
podcasts. I listened to Jenna Kutcher. I started watching Chris Do on YouTube. Like, there is this autonomy and freedom and access, like just straight access that like my mom is a business owner. She started her interior design business in 2002. You weren't YouTubing stuff in 2002. You couldn't figure out what to price or like what invoicing software you want. Like there,
No.
and then my grandmother had a laser nurse business. My great grandmother had her interior design firm. Like you were really doing things like that's a much steeper hill to climb than now with like everything at our fingertips. Like you don't even have to
Yes.
wait. You don't even have to get access. So I'm curious, like, because my sister and I joke all the time, like, oh yeah, but nobody teaches you how to file taxes and nobody teaches you a profit and loss statement and nobody teaches you
But you
like
can Google
how to
it.
create an NA balance until you Google it, right? So, but it's always shocked me that education, especially on the high school level, hasn't embraced that. We're like, we used to have home ec, then that went away. And then what replaced it? But then why not then a full pendulum swing to teach the next generation of business owners? Like that makes sense to me.
So we're a slow moving ship.
Yeah, of course.
Anything in
Of course.
education, we catch up, but it's not quick. And we catch up and it's already moved on. Like it's just
Right.
worth noting that it's a big enough thing that like we don't react quickly in education.
Sure.
And we are a bureaucracy. I mean, I say we like I'm part of it and I don't want to be part of that, but like it is what it
Right.
is. As I'm battling with like, the purchasing department about this and like all
Sure.
of these very bureaucratic structures, they exist. Getting a new course approved is not as simple as being like, hey, I want to teach this and the kids want to do
Right.
it. It's so much more complicated than that. California law states you have to have the most qualified teacher teaching it, which define it for a marketing
Yeah.
teacher.
What does that yeah.
Right. And so we have, for anybody who remembers ROP classes, those were career-ish. Those are like your auto shop, your wood shop kind of
Sure.
classes. When I took photography at Grossmont, it was an ROP class, which meant you had to be 16 or older. I took it as a 15-year-old.
There you go. There you go.
I was a young student, so I was like, please, I will be 16. Um, and it was meant to be kind of career-ish, they were more career based, but again, a
Right.
step in that direction. And now we have career technical ed, and that is we have pathways that are based on 15 identified industries of growth that are happening in the United States. I teach as part of the arts, media, and entertainment pathway kind of industry sector. And
Right.
we're looking at the creative industries. Every school can identify how that pathway shapes and moves. So like on our campus, we saw a need for graphic design and photography, and that's what it became. But like one of our schools in our district does the same pathway, but it's film and multimedia. So they're looking at short films and that development. Again, radically different. If you transfer, you're not going to have the same classes, but they're learning those skills. And I like to think they're very transferable to any industry. You don't have to go
Totally.
into graphic design to use the skills that I teach. But there is a business and marketing that is one of the industries, but it comes down to what does your population at your school want and need? Can you find the teacher to teach it? For example, the criminal justice pathway, you have to have been a lawyer, a judge, or a cop as a previous job, and then choose to teach high school and then decide, I know,
Yeah.
I want to teach high school. But it's
Yeah, fascinating.
fascinating, and it's like, how do you find the person to do the job? We do have some of our school district. Some of our schools have business and marketing. I think Mount Miguel High School does. I think there's one or two other have like business academies, Mount Vista, things like that. And they're great, but it has to suit the school and what the school needs. Because of the fact that we have the digital arts that focuses on branding, I would be hard pressed to have also a marketing and business pathway on our campus.
Sure.
I think they would compete too hard, but I
Sure.
try to lean into it, and I will lean even harder knowing that that's something that students want. We do offer standalone courses though that are about like, we have a personal finance math class. We have an English for business, which is about like resume writing, and it's a senior level English that helps them write their college essays. And their second semester
Right.
final is a small claims court case that they
There
have
you
to argue.
go.
Yeah. So
Ooh.
we do have
Oh.
them, but they're limited,
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. As you've heard me say time and time again on this podcast, what worked in 2024 for social media management is not the same as what's going to cut it in 2025. Platforms are shifting, algorithms are chaotic, and keeping up feels like playing whack-a-mole in the wild, wild west. That's exactly why we made our 2025 social media webinar. This is the deck that we actually sent to our clients. It's 65 slides long. And in the 45-minute webinar, I basically walk you through all the platforms, who owns them, their involvement with the current political administration, what are the pros and cons of each platform, what content performs best, as well as what our team would need for strategy, content creation, and posting and engagement to run the strategy on behalf of your brand. So whether you're a small business owner looking to work with us, or you're also a social media manager or creative just trying to get a better grip of the social media landscape, this is a resource you're going to want to take advantage of. You want to head to our website, mkwcreativeco.com/resources. So mkwcreative.co/resources. This is the 2025 social media webinar. And just for you, I included the one-pager reference guide that we've also sent to our clients to really give you the full menu of options in one big flash sheet. So take advantage of it or hit the link in the show notes to get access to our 2025 social media webinar, because it is wild out there and you shouldn't have to figure it out by yourself. Good luck. Enjoy. Yeah, I think it's so interesting because it goes on the theory of like, if you see it, you believe it, right? Like if you can see something, you can see a path in front of you, you can believe that like, okay, wow, I didn't know. And one of my favorite things to tell your students is like, I started my business when I was 20. You know what I
And
mean?
they're
Like,
like,
granted, I
that's
was in
not that long from
college.
now.
Exactly, exactly. And I got the sweetest text from my sister a few years ago that was like, she had just turned 20 and she's like, wow, I realized like you were my age when you like started this whole thing. And like, that's pretty badass. And I was like, thanks.
Thank you.
You know what I mean?
Glad you
So
acknowledged it.
it's interesting, but I think I'm always interested in what the younger generations like are what they're interested in, because they're gonna have so much purchase power, and with like digital payments and access to the internet and allegiance to brands and entrepreneurs and all these things, all the way up to government. And like
It's a
how
lot.
billionaires
It's a lot.
get plugged in and installed in certain things, right? Like there's plenty of examples of entrepreneurship, but I'm really curious what your students thought of the branding challenge, just because I'd love for us to talk about that and
Yes.
how they put that on, because the Kiss My Portfolio challenge really lays out like, okay, here's an entrepreneur with a vision. Help them realize it. What was their feedback to
Yeah.
you, and what was their introduction to the project? Did they get overwhelmed? Were they like, oh my gosh, or did they dive in both feet and they're like, hell yeah, give it to me?
Little bit of both. So,
Okay.
my pathway is a 2-year program, and so the second year of the capstone, the second semester, I prepped them. We founded Studio 225 last year, which is our design studio, and the students work with clients. That is like the
Okay.
goal for the end of their pathway is that second semester they do at least one project where they're working with a client that is not me. I mean, obviously, I have to give them a grade, but that's like their form of payment. Essentially, they are working with a client that isn't part of me, school, class, etc. And so this year, I was able to kind of time it to where the Kiss My Portfolio Challenge happened at the very beginning of the semester, which is kind of our leading into working with clients. So this is like the
Cool.
safer safety net moment, but
Yep.
it's coming. And they're very apprehensive, anxious at times, but they're also really excited about it. And so I kind of introduced the project. They saw the seniors do it last year, so they kind of knew it was coming.
Yep.
And they heard you speak last year as like a
Yep.
guest speaker. And I'm like, remember her? She's coming back.
Yep.
This time you're on the stage. And they really loved your client breakdowns. They loved that
Yay.
because this
Good.
is the first time they've seen one. And
Sure.
we haven't touched on a lot of how to ask the right questions. And they're very anxious about that. And they're like, okay, seeing a full client breakdown is super helpful. Now they have to kind of backwards plan. How do I get it? How do I ask the questions to get that breakdown? Because I know how much that helped me. And so that's kind of our next step. I help them less on this project. I mean, I'll answer questions and how do I do this? Oh, this technical thing. But I do very little feedback on it, which is hard for me. I just sit there and like, oh, so good. Keep going. Maybe differently. But I help them so much less on this project because I want them to really lean into it as much as they can without me. Because in
Right.
4 months, they're without me entirely.
Right.
I was very surprised, pleasantly surprised that their work was just like what it was and how much they got
Yeah.
done. And they're not fast workers. And I say that not about that class because when they're watching this and
Sure.
they're like, wow, Miss Youngman, that's mean. Just as a generation, it's a slower
Yeah.
moving in progress, a little bit more methodical, but like just every piece takes a little longer than it used to. And so I was nervous about the 10 days and most of them got it done, I would say.
Yeah.
They said that, I'll like quote it because it's worth quoting. They had a better understanding of designing when they were designing for a client rather than themselves, because up
Yes.
until now they've been designing for themselves. And so that was like, this helped provide that better understanding. And then they really are like, mock-ups are important. Like, yeah,
Yes.
they're so important.
Uh-huh.
They're
Uh-huh.
vital.
Uh-huh. Because
It's
really
furnishing the house to sell the house, it's
absolutely. And the brand design process is just showing your client the mirror back to them. Like you're a translator in a lot of ways, right? Like you're listening to them speak to you in one language and then you're spitting it back in another language saying like, is this what you meant? And that kind of like finding that middle ground to me was always the most fun part of art plus business is like,
Yes.
okay, you have a problem. I'm trying to solve your problem in a business sense, but I'm going to solve your problem with art. And I feel like that's like being able to see that play out as a young person has got to be like pretty satisfying. And I was so excited to see their work. Like both times I've come into class, like you can see, you can start to see, especially some of these students, you can start to see, I'm like, oh, you're on to something here. Like you're
Uh-huh.
on. And I've hosted these challenges now. Like each challenge has had over 50 different challengers. The first one having 268. Like I've seen these brands a lot of times. And there were still some concepts where I was like, huh, no one's ever put that
Haven't seen
forward
that.
before.
Mhm.
Haven't seen that. That's really interesting. Lean into that. And like, can you use now the AI tools at your disposal to even greenlight that, go even further with that, right? And like be the technology optimist and give that vision to the client side. So I was very impressed by your
Yeah.
students.
Thank you. They are appreciative of that. They worked really hard on it. It's funny you ask about how they're different, and of course, Gen Z is completely knowledgeable about the internet. They are very apprehensive about AI.
Fair enough.
Like very like reject it. They're like, ooh no. And the second I'm like, hey guys, you can use AI for this. They're like,
Mhm.
like
Interesting.
stink face, like they're angry about it. They're like, absolutely not. I'm better than that. And it's like this, I won't resort to using that. I'm an actual artist kind of attitude. And
Sure.
which I do love to some extent, but I'm like, remember, I'm not asking you to design your logo on AI. That would be
Right.
stealing. That would be cheating. But your mockups, find them. And they're like, I don't know, man.
Totally.
They're really
Create
struggling with it.
them. Well, I think the AI, but you have this in the artist like in the artist culture
Yes.
already, right? Because
Yes.
there's a lot of misunderstanding about AI and what it can do. And I've gotten into some heated debates on social media about what it can do. But for me, it's not so much that I'm looking for the AI to do my job as a creative,
Right.
is I need it to show me the picture that's in my head. So I already have the idea. I just need the machine to show me the thing that I already have in my head.
Right.
So in
Yeah,
that
and that's one
way,
way to train that skill. They don't have
right,
that entirely yet. So a lot of
right.
people are using AI to not just mirror it, but just build the mirror, build the
For
glass,
them.
you know.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right, 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 and one of your students came up after and said, she's like, "I didn't realize that you could use AI for these things, like, I'm concerned about AI for the environment, all these other opportunities, like, is it stealing from artists?" And I thanked her, first of all, for the question. I said, "Yeah, we're having this discussion on the podcast, literally, this is happening in real time, like, all this AI stuff, like, we weren't even talking about this 2 years ago, so, like, it is a new frontier in every sense of the word, but it's just kind of this idea of, for me, AI gets my clients who like don't have either the budget or the opportunity or the privilege or the access to be able to bring their idea to life faster, better, easier, more realized than ever before. And so maybe
Yes.
it gives an opportunity to then go hire an architect that can do an incredible thing, or go hire a
Right.
painter that can make a mural because we have a mock-up of what we're looking for. Like, and in that way, I think it begets a lot of new jobs. But I think as they're starting to graduate, the job requirements now are going to be that you have, just like learning Adobe Illustrator or learning Canva is a job requirement. Knowing AI and image generation specifically, and video generation and storyboarding is going to be a job requirement.
It is. And we talk about it, and it's hard because in a lot of the sense, most of the students who come through my program love to draw, and they love to
Yeah.
illustrate, and they love to create. And they do it I mean, they may be trained middle school or like have done it since they were a little kid or any of those things. But for the most part, they're just like, there's this personality of an artist. They're like, I am an artist. It is part of my identity. And the thought of having something else do that for them is like, whoa. And I'm like, I'm not asking for that. I'm not saying give up creating and have something do it for you. I'm saying use it to add to your vision. And it's challenging because like even in photography,
Yeah.
most photographers reject all AI because, I mean, well, not all, because
But you're going to love it when you need to Photoshop out some power lines in the back of your photo. We're going to love AI in that instance.
yes, but we're not going to do it to add a castle to that beautiful landscape, even though a
Correct.
castle really does belong there.
Correct.
And so it's like it's okay to take away with AI, but it's not okay to add with AI. It's kind of like, okay, so is that the rule? And then
It
where's the
could
rule? Where's the
be.
line?
Right. But also,
And we're
like,
defining now.
we're defining it in
Yeah,
real time, right? Like, arguably, every image that you've ever seen has been altered because you didn't see it with your own eyes. The way that it's
right.
framed, the lighting, the composition,
The
the
settings you
edit,
chose.
the settings, whether you're viewing it on Instagram or you're viewing it as a poster, you're viewing it in a gallery, like everything is through the lens of the artist. So yes, like whether the artist is actually physically drawing it or making it with their hands or not, it's kind of this whole argument of like a lot of the fine arts conversation, like people get really mad about the banana taped on the wall because
We
they're like,
talked about
okay,
that yesterday.
Michelangelo David, artist,
Uh-huh.
this is real art, blah, 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 like, and I love this as a topic because it just points out the hypocrisy of where we perceive value. But the reason that we have these high Renaissance arts are because they were all financially supported by religion. Like, like, do you know what there's so many like nefarious
Yes.
actors in
Oh, yeah.
the art
Oh, yeah.
space
Of
that
course.
it's hard to say. But getting mad about the banana tapes on the wall, I'm curious what your students had to say about that.
So we are doing our history of photography unit in my photo
Sure.
classes right now, and which they love so much. It's their favorite unit of the
Right.
year. It's mine because I have a history degree and
Sure.
an art minor, so it is mine. But we're talking about the pictorialists and the first photographers who established themselves as artists and
Uh-huh.
not scientists, but artists. And how their conversation about how they're like, no, I'm an artist too. No, really, I swear. And painting's been around forever, cave paintings all the way back to the beginning of man. And sculpture's been around forever. And they've
Forever.
never had to prove themselves. And they just have it. They just are art. And then photography walks up, 1900, turn of the century, and we're like, we are too. And the painters are like, no, you're not.
No, you're not.
And so we're talking about this conversation. And we're like, okay, so how do you define art? What is it? And the kids are like, I hate questions like this. And I'm like, okay, so there's 5 billion Snapchat photos sent every day. Is every one of them art? And there's always one kid who's like, yes, mine are all art.
Mhm.
I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
sure.
Mhm.
And then I'm like, there's 1.3 billion Instagram photos posted every day. Are they all
Mhm.
art? And
Mhm.
some kids are like, yes and no. And we're like, so what defines it? And then they're like, we usually whittle down to motive. You got to intend to create
Yep.
something.
Yep.
Doesn't have to be good art. Oh, I have a
Yep.
thumbs up. That's cool. Um, you have to have intended to make something, and you had to have some skill involved. Again, it doesn't have to be.
Sure.
You're not necessarily God's gift to the art world, but you had to have some technical skill involved.
Interesting. So in your example then, duct tape to the banana to the wall, this I would argue, people would say there's no skill in that. I would argue the skill is the framing of the context of the piece.
A lot of my
So you
students were like, "Rich people will do anything, won't they?"
that too, but like I
That
so
was the
my
eye roll of
yeah.
$6.2 million it sells for, and they're like, "Oh, if
Uh-huh.
only they use that for someone like us." Um,
Uh-huh. But my emphasis in college was
uh-huh.
social sculpture. So I was very interested in like, okay, so performance art, performance-based
Yes.
art, like literally setting up scenarios, almost in like a scientific sense, still in art. Planning a dinner party, an art, figuring out where people are going to sit, who's going to talk to whom. Like you, when you start to break out of the little, quite literal, like frame or institution of art, it's a lot more
Right.
framing.
And is creativity itself art? The
Right.
small child who sits in colors because they feel like it is art. Is it
Correct.
necessarily something that belongs in an art gallery? Not necessarily, because nobody has chosen to give it value. But that's a choice that the public makes
Yeah.
based on a whim. And a banana was given the moment, but
Mm-hmm.
it very easily could have been looked at and been like, what a joke.
Uh-huh.
Van Gogh was not important or famous or in any way interesting until he died.
Yeah. That too. He was a crazy
Banana
person.
could have been
Cut off his
interesting
ear.
after the banana went bad. Who knows? The
Yeah.
banana browning could have been the art form. Like and
Right.
and I think that like a lot of people see it and they struggle with it. And contemporary art and performative art is a harder pill to swallow for I know myself. It's not my thing. And I tell students that doesn't make it not art, but it's not my favorite.
I mean, but do
And
we
the
not just see this
kids,
with the Super Bowl halftime show? Like people being
yeah,
like, "Oh, bring back the real performance, the Super Bowl." Like just because you don't understand Kendrick
I thought it was
Lamar or
beautiful.
you don't
I don't
exactly,
I
and
don't
also
know his music.
I
I don't
don't
like
have
his
to
music
exactly.
necessarily,
I don't have to follow him
but it's
to
beautiful.
appreciate there's craft, there's performance, there's a statement happening here, there's symbolism, there's
Colors,
lyrical
yes.
genius. The guy's a Pulitzer Prize winner for crying out loud. But the discourse that happened around deciding whether or not this performance was worthy of Super Bowl attention, I was like, are we joking? It's
It's a football game.
2025.
Guys, take a breath.
2025. What are we?
Yes. Well, and I thought
Crazy.
it's funny because my sister-in-law and I sat next to each other on the couch and watched it. And she loves his music and she's like, "Oh, this is
Yeah.
great. This is great." And I'm just like, I don't have any idea what's
Yeah.
happening. And I'm sitting there like, it's amazing how old you can feel watching a presentation or a show or something. You're like, this wasn't meant for me.
But that's
Um,
okay. That's the
but
point.
it
And maybe
was.
the banana taped on the
Uh-huh.
wall wasn't meant for everybody. And that's also okay.
Right.
You know?
Art was not meant to be liked by everybody. It's meant to
Correct.
inspire conversation and
Correct.
create
Correct.
interest. And if anything, Kendrick Lamar did it. So therefore,
Absolutely.
like it
Absolutely. We're still talking
created
about it. We're going to
discourse.
keep talking about it. Exactly. And that's exactly branding too, right? So just like tie it all back
Yes.
together is like, I'm telling my clients all the time when they put in their contact form, like our ideal client, everyone. I was like, you lost the plot. I was like, we're already
Because it's
losing.
not.
We're already losing because number one, it's not. And number two, it can't. It
Yeah.
can't possibly be everyone because not everyone is the same person and not everyone has the same desires and not everyone is going to benefit from what you have to offer. So it's
And your
like,
ideal
okay,
client deserves to be selected to and chosen and like kind of like a gift, like come in, it's you we're looking for. You're special.
Seen and heard. We want the ideal client to feel seen and to feel heard, to feel like, oh, this looks like what I want. This looks like what I'm working towards. This looks like where I want to go with this. And I also, wow, they understand me. They understand my pain points. They understand my struggle. They understand my vision. They understand my goals, my aspirations, all these things. So that's, I think, again, where branding takes like a slightly different bend than art for art's sake, is like we are working towards solving a problem with the art, right? We're working towards trying to find the people to come into the circles, to have the conversations, to do the business, because everyone's in the business of helping people.
And branding is a functional art form. It's not necessarily meant to be a painting that hangs on a wall and is stagnant. It's meant to be a moving, flexing, living thing. More like furniture to some extent and buildings, because it's just meant to exist in a space and continue adapting.
And serve a purpose. Yeah.
And serve a purpose. And that's a hard one for people to swallow when they're trying to like compare art forms, you know? And a student's like, wait, is a chair a sculpture? I'm like, I mean, yeah, it's a functional one. It's meant to be sat on. That's part of its use in the world, but technically, yes. And he's like, well, you say we're not allowed to photograph other people's artworks. I mean, I can't photograph a chair. I'm like, that's different. You can photogrother a chair, maybe not because it's boring, but
depends on the chair. If it's Marina Abramovich's chair, then maybe no. You know what I mean? Like
if it's a chair in a garden that no one's allowed to touch, maybe don't.
Yeah. Funny. Wow. So this so much that we covered. We could chit chat all the time about this.
For days.
But I think we gave some really good insights on like education, what the industry is needing, what the students are feeling. What would kind of be if you could snap your fingers and fix something about education in the arts? And we'll end on this because I feel like maybe this will inspire someone who can come talk to your students about it or help bridge a gap or solve a problem that you're like, dang, I really wish we could help everyone understand that blank.
Oh, that's a really hard question. Because there's on one hand so many things, but also like there's some really big ones. As an art teacher, I have a hard time getting taken seriously. In the education community specifically, but even in the greater community as an artist. Artists are often like, oh, but like, when's your real job? The starving artist makes me want to scream because it's like, no, there's artists that are successful every day, but it's not a linear industry. Like welding is you get your certificate and you become a welder and then you are a welder. The creative industries are so spiderwebby. And so they're harder to track and harder to prove. And so I think more than anything that like art teachers are just as important as every other teacher.
Really?
Just because we teach art doesn't make us less than. We are core teachers. We're a graduation requirement. But more than that becoming an artist is not a less than industry. Yes. If anything, we rely on creativity and we rely on visuals so much in our world that if I could snap my fingers and change anything, it'd be that artists are, treated as the forefront of the industries because they are. No business exists without their marketing team.
That's true.
So, I mean, that to me is everything. And it's the battle we fight every day.
Absolutely. Is there something that you wish you could snap your fingers and have your students understand?
Consequences.
Yeah. Ooh, consequences.
I wish that they understood consequences. I wish that they knew that their actions have them. And it's not my fault when something goes wrong because they chose not to do an assignment or come to class on time. And somehow I'm the bad guy every time. And that's hard. And I'm like, I'm teaching them something, but then they're like, man, you're just mean. And I'm like, well, that's what you got out of this, huh?
Just wait till you get your first boss, okay?
and then you want to snap back with that, and then you're like, that's not it.
That's not helpful.
I have to say it really loud in my head. But yes,
oh my goodness.
Consequences would be the thing that I would be like, hey guys,
this is a real thing.
They're gonna suck, and they're coming for you big time.
Yeah. Where can everyone find you? Reach out. Maybe they want to come talk to your students, offer some kind of coursework or guest speaking thing. Would love to give them the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. So we have an Instagram. I'm going to be the first to admit that I'm not a social media expert.
Right.
So while we have one, I'm very bad at posting and I should be better at posting their artwork because they have incredible work. But we're at GHS Photo DA for digital art. And then we do have a website. If you search us at, we're Grossmont Studio 225. So if you're in the San Diego community and want any design work done,
nice.
We do design work and we'd love to work potentially. And then my email is C and then my last name Jungman at ghsd.net. So lots of places.
Perfect. And we'll have those all linked in the show notes, guys, so take advantage of those. Thanks so much for your time today, Carolyn, on a Friday by the time we're recording. This is a great conversation. I'm looking forward to coming back into the classroom and helping for more semesters.
And thank you for always coming in. We're so appreciative of it.
Gosh, my pleasure. And if you're a student listening to this episode, you better subscribe to the channel. If you're seeing this on TikTok, you better give me a freaking follow.
They owe me that. I'll make it an assignment. Don't worry.
That's so funny. So funny. Well, thanks so much for your time, and we'll catch you next time, guys.
All right. Have a good one. Bye.